πάροχος της Καστοριάς τραβούσε τα μαλλιά του σαν ήρθανε τα ταρκικά στην περιφέρεια του σαν ήρθανε τα ταρκικά.
Oh, welcome back, friends and comrades to Comrade Uncle. We got a lot to talk about, a lot of excitement. We are cursed to live in interesting times, as they say. So we wanted to blast through some stuff here. Hello, my sweet uncle. I'm so glad to see you. How are you doing?
Hey, Sam. Good to be here.
Good.
Sunny Florida. You're in cold Wisconsin. Sorry.
Fucking cold. It just snowed last night. God damn it.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's that saying that is attributed to V.I. Lenin that decades pass with nothing happening, and then decades happen in weeks. And it feels like since the last time we talked, which was, I think, in early December, mid-December, something like that, that's kind of been what's gone on. And since we last talked, what's happened? Firstly, there is a ceasefire in Palestine, which is, that's not correct, is it? In Gaza, the attacks continue in the West Bank, violent, aggressive attacks by the Israeli occupation forces on the West Bank, increasing. There was the release of, I believe it was it four prisoners of war, young women who had been soldiers. They were kept, and they were turned over via the Red Cross to the Israelis. And what was really remarkable, what was truly remarkable, that turnover was they really looked healthy. There was one young woman soldier who had been a bit overweight when she was captured and remained a bit overweight when she was released. I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm just no, I'm not trying to fat shame. My conscience just said I was fat shaming. I'm not trying to fat shame. I'm merely pointing out the fact that in contradistinction to that, the photos of the Palestinian prisoners, hostages that were released, show these guys scabies-ridden, have lost weight, have lost hair. Their hair has gone from black to gray. It's remarkable the difference in treatment. Yeah,
I saw a guy had all these scars all over him. Clear evidence of torture. Very clear evidence of torture.
So, I mean, again, not that to be held prisoner would be no fun, no matter where you are. That's all true. But and it was truly, I mean, it was truly one scene, because when the resistance released those young Israeli women, they had released them with goodie bags, which I don't understand that, but okay, I love it. And there's one scene where this one young woman, I don't know who she is, but it's so that you can see it if you look for the release videos. And she passes by one of the fighters, and as she passes by, she is scanning his covered face continuously with this huge smile. Which appears to be a smile of affection. Now, again, I'm not recommending that anybody be taken prisoner in any way, shape, or form, but it is remarkable, the difference. So that certainly happened. And then, of course, we have the contrast. Then, of course, we have
interesting point about that. In the goodie bags, there's a variety of things. Souvenirs and stuff like that. One of the things I thought interesting, contrast, and kind of a bit of poking fun, was when you're released from an Israeli prison, you're given a certificate of release. The Palestinian resistance also gave them a release certificate, a nice little laminated thing to take home with them. So I thought that was kind of funny.
You should, if you have the links to that, what was in those bags. I didn't know that. That'd be nice to post on this as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll put it in.
And then what else happened since then? Well, and then Trump was inaugurated. Now, I don't know about you, but I definitely did not watch the inauguration. But I have watched with some interest some of the hearings in Congress for his cabinet members. And I must say that everything bad I thought that Trump would begin to do was simply a lack of imagination on my part. It's been, you hear that in the background, Susanna saying, it's been worse. She said, it's worse. That's right. It is worse.
Yeah, it is.
And
it's just like what Kevin said 10 years ago, or whatever it was. Anything you think of Trump, no matter how bad you think he is, he's working.
Right. Our daughter's husband, wonderful guy, worked, he's a professional chef, worked in Mar-a-Lago while Trump owned it. It was his first job. And one of the things he said when Trump was running is he said, anything you think you know about Trump, anything you think is bad, forget it. It's many times worse.
Really?
When Trump would show up, or just before he would show up, again, this is Mar-a-Lago, this is years ago, the kitchen staff would be asked to clean out brown and black people.
Go, no blacks in the front, no blacks.
Oh, sorry, I got it wrong. After he showed up, he would say to the staff that he didn't want in the front serving people, black or brown people. So anything you think you know about that creature, that diaper-ridden creature, is less than the truth. So he was inaugurated, and we've watched some of his people before Congress. It's all been fairly bad. And of course, the Democrats have been spineless fools.
Or active accomplices.
Well,
45 Democrats voted for their little border shenanigans, their draconian immigration policy. 45.
Yeah. And I don't. Marco Rubio was appointed, and he passed through Congress. If I'm not remembering incorrectly, no Democrat voted against him. And so they've been minimally complicit. How about that? I mean, it's remarkable. I don't see why. I mean, they talk, including Schumer. These guys talk as if bipartisanship still mattered. They do not realize that they are at war with fascism, with active fascism.
I completely disagree. I completely disagree. I think that they absolutely think that bipartisanship matters, and this is their bipartisanship. Trump is their bipartisan. Now, in this, I think we differ a little bit because I see it as a complete complicity, an utter agreement about the fundamentals of what they're doing. And that means disenfranchising poor people. That means oppressing people across the globe. That means taking away your abortion rights. I do think that they are completely in lockstep about this stuff. I think that I shed all pretense. Let me say the opposite line to them actually being in opposition. And maybe it's wrong, and I hope it's wrong. But I think that they are playing a game with us. I think that it is a complete charade. And that goes for both sides. Both these sort of divisive issues that nobody really is on board. I mean, okay, abortion, like most Americans don't want to ban abortion. It just is not the case. However, they use it as this thing, the same thing with gun rights. You know, it's like they kind of use them as these cudgels and these whips to keep people moving forward so that the operation of capitalism and of imperialism continues. All these divisive issues, trans rights, and that doesn't mean that it doesn't have very real effects for people. That doesn't cause death and suffering and misery at home for the very people that it claims to serve in one way or another. That people don't lose rights. That trans people aren't committing suicide every day. Well, or whatever, frequently. Because they are under attack. Those things are real. However, I don't believe that there is a substantive difference. I think that it is a relay race. The one guy hands it off to the next. Obama deported the most people in American history. Trump deported the most people in American history, surpassing Obama. Biden deported the most people in history, surpassing Trump. And now Trump is on track to do the very same. And did you hear? Now he wants to send them to Guantanamo. He wants to open a new. So anyway, and there is the alternate read that may be true. I could be wrong. You're absolutely right. They could just be fucking idiots. And there is that old line, right? Don't ever attribute malice when don't ever attribute malice when incompetence will suffice. Which is, it's possible. I just hate them.
So the very point, the points you raise, it's impossible to take issue with the data points you raise, that's for sure. Whether the interpretation of those data points is that there's no difference. I will grant you it's very hard to find any daylight between them. That part is certainly true. Yes. I didn't tell you what?
What Mary said to us.
We're not talking about what Mary said.
Oh, I thought you said something about what Mary
But dude,
said. Okay, sorry.
No,
I want to hear what my mom said.
I'll tell you what your mom said. Yeah, no.
Okay.
But it's hard to find. Sorry. It's hard to find any daylight between the behavior of the two, with certain exceptions. So when RFK Jr. was being grilled by
we got to talk about that guy.
Yeah, no. We will. But when he was being grilled by Elizabeth Warren, he was being grilled by Elizabeth Warren. When the Republicans got to him, it was all sweetness and light. So there's difference. Wyden was also good. There's difference in degree. When it comes to foreign policy issues such as the genocide, yes, there's no difference. When it comes to military, actually, I think to essentially any foreign policy, there's really no difference. And you're right. There are one would have to be breathtakingly naive, and I frankly plead guilty to that. Breathtakingly naive. For 50 years I've been watching this stuff to say that when the Dems had the ability to, for example, codify in law. Roe v. Wade. They just didn't do it. It was never important. Just never important. When the Dems had the ability, that is to say that the number of votes you need to get us at least a single payer option, which remember that's what Biden promised. It just wasn't important. And no matter what Obama said, and again, you already know this, but for our listeners, my wife and I, Susanna more than I, worked aggressively on both of Obama's campaigns, thinking that there was an opportunity for change.
Me too.
He didn't do it. He did not do it. He was unwilling to expend the energy, the political capital to do what needed to be done. And that also includes, by the way, or didn't want to. Again, don't attribute to malice what you can attribute to stupidity or laziness or whatever else. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act was a small step forward, but that's all. Yeah. It's as I say in the article that I wrote for whatever that journal was that I wrote it in. What was it? Oh, Newsbreak. Yeah. Interview.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But
continue.
When I was in a conference, and the guy who was the head of the hospital system I was at the time brought one of Obama's main policy guys for Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, to give a lecture. And so everybody received him politely. Of course, why would you not? But at the end, I raised my hand and said, help me understand, like I was a 10-year-old, why you guys didn't push for a single-payer option of something, just anything, something. And he made all sorts of excuses like, Manchin. It was like, Manchin, stuff like that. And maybe it was true.
That excuse.
But the truth is that's why you have political capital or any capital to expend, to do stuff that needs to be done if you want to do it. But if you don't, because your donors are paying you to not get it done because they're making some serious bucks off this health system, well, that's a different issue there. But anyway, we digress.
How many? Yeah, I know, right? But also, how many? Same thing with these 45 Democrats that voted for this draconian immigration policy. Okay, well, they have primaries. You have no problem forcing out, pro-Palestine people. You have no problem squashing Bernie. You have no problem laying the hammer down. How many years has it been since Obamacare? Why is Manchin still around? You could have cut him out of the party. They have choices. They don't want the choices.
Well, that's actually, of course, an interesting question, and it raises its head. Why did we have Kamala Harris as the nominee rather than somebody else? And it's the United States is a pretty big country. I mean, we have 320 million people. I mean, there is no paucity of thoughtful, progressive, reasonable, willing to compromise human beings in our country that could do much, much better than did Biden, and it could be better than Kamala. The issue is I think, is that we don't want that, and that goes back to your comment on them being basically the same. It's my belief, and I must admit it's mostly belief, but belief based on all the reading I've done, that since FDR, and you really can kind of mark this time tag it with FDR, since FDR, and there were flaws in all of his programs, don't misunderstand me, it wasn't perfect, but since then, the Dems have progressively moved to the right and have betrayed the working class of the United States. And the working class, let me just be perfectly clear, is made up in this country by people who work in factories as well as people who work in hospitals, by people who sweep floors as well as by people who operate on brains. It's like that is, and it's women and brown and black and gay and straight and you name it. They have betrayed the working class and gone over to basically be a party of finance capital, Wall Street, just like the Republicans. Yeah. So it's really, in that regard, as you commented earlier, there is no difference. And certainly with Citizens United, there's no way to impact that because we can, as Bannon says, flood the zone with shit. They can flood the zone with cash. And there's just no way around that.
Right. Well, and I, let me clarify one point. It's not that there's no difference because there is a difference. However, it's that they're on the same team. That's my contention is not so much that there is, because there is a substantive, if small, difference, especially on domestic political issues. However, on the greater project, I think it's like a relay race, right? One runner runs fast, one runner runs slow. You think you have the illusion of a choice of who the next runner will be. However, they're running in the same direction and they're on the same team. That's my whether that be deliberate or structural. It could be an unintentional. Because they are moving in the same direction. Period. They believe the same. They have the same fundamental ideological basis, whether that be neoconservatism or neoliberalism. They kind of work together, right? The project of empire continues apace.
I think you're right, and I think it's important to point that out. It's very easy to look at, for example, a Trump or Representative Ogles from Tennessee, who we'll talk about, and think bad things about these guys. These are bad guys. I mean, in some ways, maybe, but what they really but you really touched on the issue. What it really is an issue of the ideological outlook. I mean, all of these guys, maybe Trump's an exception, but all of these guys, get up in the morning thinking they're doing the right thing. It's the ideological outlook. And that's the change we have to make. It starts at the bottom, not at the top. It's a generational project, is to get people, our people, working people, to think differently about the way power should be exercised.
Damn right.
And in whose benefit. And we've not been successful at that. It starts, I think, we start to lose when FDR dies. I mean, I think we never really had a good grip on it anyway. But we start to lose when FDR dies, and we have gone so far to the right that it's very, very difficult to see using the institutions that exist today, I mean, Democratic Party, Republican Party, how you could turn that around. I'm not sure. And so it may be that what we need to do, and again, generational change, is we need a labor party of some kind, or something. I'm not sure.
Or maybe Lenin, Lenin said famously not long before the October Revolution that he didn't think anything would change in his lifetime. Who's to say?
It's true. It's true. I just finished reading Tariq Ali's book on the dilemmas of Lenin, and that very set of thoughts was clear as can be in that.
Really,
I think so. Tariq Ali, the guy's wonderful. I'd love to share coffee with him, have coffee with him one day. The other thing, but I think we want to, before we move along, because we've kind of veered very far into
back on course. And I have some more stuff. I got some more news.
U.S. politics. But I think the thing, because we touched on the issue of Palestine and Israel, I think we need to make it clear, even though there is a truce right now, it is my opinion, just opinion, based on what I read and what I see, that it won't last, that there will be more death and destruction, and that this thing is far, far, far from over. Trump has explicitly stated he wants to try and move. He didn't say 2.3 million, because 2.3 million Palestinians are no longer alive. He said 1.8 million. Point. Yes. 1.8 million, he said he wants to move into Jordan and or Egypt. The Jordanians and Egyptians are saying...
And what's the implication of that? Yes. Okay, well, say what they're saying, but the implication is...
The implication is 600,000 people are dead. If my math is correct. Yeah, I think my math is correct. And it wouldn't surprise me at all in the slightest. This has been the bloodiest, most disgusting genocide of the 21st century. Okay, fine. We're at the beginning of it. But it is pretty disgusting. Perpetrated.
It's horrifying.
As Edward Said said, the Palestinians are the victims of victims. What Europe did to the Jewish people, there is no question, full stop. Never, ever is that a question. But what sort of the Zionists have done to the Palestinian people, sort of as if they were fighting Nazis. What? As if they were... It's just absurd. Most of those dead, not all, most of those, many of those, probably some 40 to 50% are children and women. And the rest is made up almost completely of innocent men. And they killed some fighters. That's true, I'm sure. How could it not be? But as even the U.S. It was Anthony Blinken, I believe, the former. I'm glad I can say former to him. He's such a creep. As the former Secretary of State said, Hamas has completely recouped its numbers. They've got more fighters than they had at the beginning, because people are saying, we tried peace, we tried the peaceful way, we tried talking, we tried marching, we tried petitions, we tried everything. All you did was kill us. Why should we sit here, again, as Sinwar said, why should we sit here and die calmly, like good prisoners? They're not going to do that. And so I think, my fear is, and I think it'll be borne out, is that there will be more violence, and it's not going to be pretty. And the only solution, to my mind, is the solution that we've talked about on this program more than one time, is a democratic secular state, one vote, one person. And if you need special minority rights, by God, by all means, they can figure it out. It's not for us to figure it out. But you can't ethnically cleanse, you can't perpetrate genocide, you can't claim victim while you're murdering, and while you are a nuclear power supported by the most powerful military in the world, ours. You can't claim the victim card. I'm sorry. Right.
Yeah. So massive losses. A continuing attack. Important note: they also invaded Syria and Lebanon. They had a ceasefire with Lebanon that they have violated something like 120 times. Which is, of course, why the
Did you
ceasefire.
Say 120?
Yeah.
I think it's you're an order of magnitude off. I think.
Oh, am I? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, regardless, sorry.
A lot. How about a lot?
We'll look it up. A lot, and I'll append it. Actually, they have violated. Greetings, comrades. It is I, future Odysseas. The number is over 800 times. 800. I was way off in that I was way low. I believe the exact number was 823. Not sure on the, give or take a dozen. So there you go. And that was actually not completely up to date to when I am recording this, which is, let's see here, February 14th. So, future Odysseas out. X many times.
Yes, yeah.
We'll cut that in post.
This is an algebra post. This is an algebra problem. Find X. Right.
X.
Right.
X is greater than 0, that's for sure.
X is greater than 0, no question about that. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're
All
right. And the whole issue of the axis of resistance and the fall of and what led to the fall of Syria is quite intriguing. Wow. And the more time goes by, the more intriguing it is. I mean, intriguing in a bunch of ways. For example, the fact that we, the United States, not you and I, but we, the United States, are now allied with ISIS and Al Qaeda in Iraq is breathtaking. the fact that these guys, who, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, are offshoots of the group who took 2 big airplanes and flew them into the Twin Towers, and they were enemies, and now they're our buds, is breathtaking. So whatever flaws, and there were flaws. I mean, I'm not naive about the flaws of the Assad regime. We have put head choppers as who says it? As what's his name? The guy who was the weapons inspector for in Iraq. I'm blanking on his name. Former Marine. It doesn't matter.
Anyway,
we put head choppers in charge of Syria. So who knows what's going to happen there? You're right. Yeah. And the Israelis have taken over a huge chunk of Syrian territory. And then on top of that, you're right as well. The Israelis were losing people very, very significantly in southern Lebanon. They signed a truce, and then they proceeded to break it over and over and over again. So, I don't think that story, neither of those stories, none of these stories are over at this point. So we will see what happens.
I think we also need to take the win, we as in humanity and those who oppose, imperialism and and this sort of, genocide, stuff like that. Credit where credit is due, although it is this unmitigated catastrophe and this horrifying atrocity, the Israelis have taken tremendous losses. It is both economically and in terms of manpower. They have part of the reason for this ceasefire is not just because X, Y, or Z, but also incredible attrition effect on Israeli forces. So that's something to think about anyway.
No, it's true, but I think it's also I would like to say
their appetite is not gone.
No, it's not. But every single one of those deaths, everyone, certainly on the Palestinian side, but on the Israeli side, are deaths that didn't need to happen. There are deaths of people that could have been salvaged, and even if you're the most virulent right-wing racist soldier wanting to just kill Palestinians, one hopes that with enough education and talk and kindness, you can save those guys. The loss of any of them. I know what you're thinking.
My doctor uncle, you're a good man.
But we need to. Any one of those losses is a loss to humanity, and and it doesn't have to be. That's the only. I'm not saying you never fight for anything. What I'm saying is, it would be our preference to try and salvage people, to try and get them to see that we can live together.
That's the world we want to build. Yeah,
that's the world we want to build. That's what socialism
absolutely. As Che Guevara said, a revolutionary is, at the risk of sounding foolish, let me propose something.
Is moved firstly by great love. Yes, that's what he said. Yeah.
Right.
And he also said, and what he also said was, "You are my brother or sister. You are my relation. If you are moved to rage by injustice to anyone."
Right.
So why?
And sorry, go ahead. Please continue.
So again, why do we worry about Palestinian injustice? Why do we worry about this? Because we believe that as socialists.
Yes.
That's what we believe.
Yes, absolutely. That brings to mind a quote by Mao. What was it? Come on. That communism is something along. I'm paraphrasing. Communism is not love. It is a hammer to smash the capitalism or imperialism or something. I'll add that in post.
That's probably what most people would expect. But yes,
well,
but there is, because there are. There are things you have to fight
agree.
for. There are,
right.
but
well, yes,
but you're not. I've been having this discussion with a couple of my kids. Actually, with one of my kids. But the whole issue of was Lenin's and the Bolshevik Revolution just a struggle to gain power and nothing else? And I think the answer is no. There is a historical record about what happened, and that record's been looked at and written about by people who have no sympathy with the Bolsheviks. And they say, well, Lenin and Trump, they're all the same. All they want is power. But there's no way that I can read the historical record and say that that's true. It's just not true. The idea in 1917, the idea, whether it was in Germany or Hungary or Russia, was the humanity and the humanness that socialism would bring. Didn't work out the first time? Okay, fine. Neither did capitalism when it started, and we'll have to see. No, you can't. Listen. On this, I know we disagree, but I'm sorry. You can't argue that the death, the literal, not figurative, the literal death of the first Central Committee, all but one member, as I recollect, was perpetrated by Stalin and his guys. That is not what socialism is supposed to be about. That is not. And it wasn't just them, right? It wasn't, but it was others as well. That is not the system that we would be fighting for. That's not the system that I think Lenin fought for either. That's a topic for a different day. Dude, what are you doing?
What I was going to say is same thing actually with China. Then there's also the substantive. So whether or not you think that the Soviet project was good on the whole or bad or was subverted or not, regardless, setting that aside, and regardless of the fact that it ended, right? It did result in substantive material gains for the people, for a huge number of people. It lifted them out of poverty. It brought them through industrialization with less suffering than industrialization caused in the West. Same thing with China, regardless of what you think of China. And the reason I brought up Mao is actually just a clumsy segue into talking about the China news. However, is that, regardless of what you think, they did lift billions of people out of poverty. Material gains for people, and whatever other problems, that we can argue about that until the end of the day, and probably will agree. You and I, at least, will agree on 98% of the points. I agree with you about that. About the early whatever, the purges. Totally on board. However, so material benefit to the people is substantive, even though it ended. Regardless of the fact.
Yes, and along those lines, and along the point that you made, look what happened in Chile in 1973 when the so-called democratic road to socialism was tried to be taken. And we utterly destroyed that. We, not you and I, but Nixon's government and Henry Kissinger, a fascist scumbag if there ever was one, destroyed that project. Set them back decades. They're coming back, but it was terrible.
Oh yeah,
horrible. So
horrible.
Anyway, all right. That's okay.
Democracy, not democracy. Anyway, so the quote was, hang on, let me get it. Communism is not love. Communism is a hammer that we use to crush the enemy. But regardless of that, which I thought was a funny juxtaposition to love. Although they are not mutually exclusive. However,
but you have to be wary,
motivated by love.
Who do you call the enemy? And that's that's disturbing.
Well,
if we disagree, am I now your enemy? Come on.
I'm with you, man.
That's a discussion. But anyway,
that's why I like that's why I like Ho Chi Minh so much, because he introduced some really important innovations to the ideas of thinkers before him, including a moderation in this sort of, the path to communism in China. It was a particularly bloody and violent one in the beginning, and there was periods of shakeups, and whether or not that was worth it or not, there was excesses in some regards, and Ho Chi Minh saw that. Not to criticize my Chinese comrades. They can do their revolution however they want, and they can run their country however they want. They are entitled to self-determination, and I'll stand by that till the day I die. However, for my money, personally, I liked the innovations that Ho Chi Minh brought to the table, including a strong commitment to democracy and a commitment not to betraying the contribution of even class traders, members of the ruling class, who, not of course not the French, but the landowners, for example, who had given tremendous amounts to support the revolution. So anyway, that was an attempt, and a terrible one, I'll admit, at bringing it. It's actually not even my favorite Mao quote, or even close to it. Patience with your with politically backwards people. Instead of criticizing them or looking down on them or scorning them, join with them, unify with them, urge them forward, and go forward with them. That is the role of a communist, according to Mao, which I like.
And at the best of our times, I mean, when again, I have particular sympathy and love for the 30s and 40s when the Communist Party of the United States was trying to organize. I mean, they went where people were, and they tried to move them ahead. And tried to sort of, education was a big deal. And, so I don't disagree with that. I think the one thing I would say, your comment about your Chinese comrades, they can do what they want. Remember, I mean, the socialist movement is an international movement. It's not like we're telling them what to do. But we have, and in fact, Rosa Luxemburg, I believe it was, who commented, we have every right. No, it wasn't Rosa. It was, pointed out that we socialists, in her case, we communists, we members of the party, which you and I are, but she was, have every right to criticize because it's an international movement. It's not some narrow national movement where, well, because you're not this, you can't critique that. It was the woman who wrote, it's on fascism and how to defeat it. I just finished her book 3 weeks ago, and I forgot her damn name.
I can look it up. On fascism.
And how to defeat it. And how to defeat
fascism and how to well, Trotsky.
Clara Zetkin. That's what it was. It's Clara Zetkin. And so that, again, it's a minor point. I'm not trying to be oppositional. But this is, it's why we would, as much as we love our Cuban comrades, we would critique stuff that they do, and they would critique us. I mean, it's just, it's what we're supposed to do.
I'm fucking wary of communists or socialists or leftists in the West critiquing the more successful socialist movements of especially the East, because it is so integrally linked with a fundamentally imperialist, ideology of us being a chauvinist ideology of us being better. We know how, and let us tell you. Which isn't to say that there aren't valid critiques or that we can't engage in a dialectical. But for my money, the way that I because I have these reservations, I have these things. But the way that I look at it is, here are the things that I think that I would do better or could do better for me in my home, in my homeland, in my, in the place that I build progress. These are the things that I would like to see for me. That doesn't mean that I'm going to tell you what to do. It's same thing with the Palestinian resistance. Now, there are certain things that I do object to. I do, taking civilian hostages is bad. War crimes bad. I strongly object. I strongly object to the death penalty. That doesn't mean I'm going to go and wag my finger at the Cubans and say you're doing it wrong. I do think that the death penalty is wrong. If I were in power, I outlaw the death penalty. I think that it causes a whole bunch of bad knock-on effects. But it's not my place to tell the Palestinians how to fight. It is not my, even if, gosh, I would by far prefer a different thing. And if, but again, the right to self-determination, the fundamental underlying solidarity with the working class of all places, the oppressed people of all places, and my willingness to stand in solidarity with them, even though I don't agree with everything that they do, and that's, that I don't think that everything they do, let me put it even more mildly, I don't think that everything they do is right for me. Look, I mean, let me take a really simple thing that maybe I can use to segue into talking about China. China has does not, and actually I've been asked about this, which I think is interesting, on Red Note, which is one of the things I wanted to talk about. I don't agree with China's policy of making marijuana illegal. I understand the historical context, the Opium Wars, the decade of humiliation, or century of humiliation, sorry, not just a decade. All of the reasons that they have, and the historical and cultural context that there is, and I respect their right to self-determination, to make the laws that they see fit for themselves. It's not my fucking business. But for my money, I don't think it should be illegal. I don't think that there's any reason, and that's a whole other thing. We've had this discussion, actually. But, at the same time, who am I to criticize? I'm not the one to criticize. I'm not the one to change their policies. I'm not the one to dictate their policies to them, even though I don't agree with some of them. I don't personally think that they're the right choice. I still stand in solidarity with them. It's like, that's not going to be the focus for me. I'm not going to critique them. I'm not going to critique the way the Palestinians choose to resist. I'm not going to critique the drug policies of China, even though I don't, fundamentally don't agree with some of them, or don't think they're right for me, or even potentially for all of humanity. Anyway,
to critique is not the same as to condemn. I mean, remember what William Lloyd Garrison said when he was asked if he condemned Nat Turner's slave rebellion, and his comment was, "I condemn or abhor, I forget the word he used, the death of innocents," because Nat Turner. I
think it was abhor, yeah.
Yeah, he said, but how can I condemn what they've done when we've basically forced this on them? And I think that's the position to take. That was Norman Finkelstein is a guy who originally brought that to my attention, and I think that's really important. Marijuana, yes, marijuana, no. I mean, I don't know. What do I know? I mean, I don't think it's a big deal, but taking hostages is true.
Yes.
There is we are not the ones going to tell the Palestinians how to resist. You're right. But we can, in a brotherly, sisterly, comradely way, critique. And the critique is actually, it's layered, right? I mean, because the spokespeople for Hamas came out after the original request by Khan from the International Criminal Court for warrants of arrest for Golan and Netanyahu and Sinwar and the other Hamas negotiator, whose name escapes me right now. And they said, the spokespeople for Hamas said, we recognize the International Criminal Court. We will present ourselves at the International Criminal Court. So on the one hand, they recognize it and are willing to be held accountable. On the second hand, there is this concept in the military called command authority. At the end of World War II, a Japanese general whose name also escapes my memory right now, slips my mind, was hung. He was tried and then killed by the United States, by the Allies, because his men had perpetrated some really rather grotesque atrocities on civilians. And the ruling was that even if you don't give the order, even if you don't know what's going on, command authority is that the guy who's in charge of those men is responsible for what those men do. Full stop.
Right.
And we, now of course we don't
as
held up.
unequally as it was applied, as much as it was an excuse for the Americans to keep a bunch of fascists around so that they could beat the communists down. Yeah, but yes.
No,
yes.
we certainly did not hold ourselves to that standard in Vietnam, for example. But my point only is that even if, because remember what happened on October 7th was a chunk of it was Hamas and their special forces, but another chunk of it were people who simply, went through the border and they took some hostages and perpetrated some crimes. I mean, command authority would demand that because Hamas didn't guard that fence so people couldn't just come and go as they wish, that they're responsible. And I think what Hamas has said is, yeah, we recognize that level of responsibility. So again, it's not a matter of saying you can only resist this way. It's not a matter of telling them how to resist. We can't do that, of course. But it is a matter of saying, again, because we go back to first instances, the move for liberation, the move to try and move away from this degrading system we have now is made up not because we just want to get power, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's because what we want is a world that's just and fair and decent, where people are, treated with kindness, with love even. So I think it is legit to be critical as well as supportive. Anyway, okay, enough. We've gone on for way too long.
Okay, all right. Now, I'm going to blow through a couple of things real quick. One is the Biden's TikTok ban, which went into effect and then was very quickly rescinded by Trump in an attempt, of course, again, to get TikTok to sell to American tech companies. Mm-hmm. And as we can see, Trump has a bunch of tech oligarchs it's standing right behind him, literally. However, interesting convergence of anti-Chinese policy of xenophobia. However, the result of the TikTok ban, the pending TikTok ban, the single day of TikTok ban is hysterically funny to me. And we got to seize on these moments of humor, drive that, in fact, also worked on me and drove a bunch of people onto a very Chinese TikTok alternative called Red Note, which is, of course, a reference to Mao's Little Red Book. Which is hysterically funny. The actual name is Xiao Hong Shu. I probably butchered that, but you get the idea. I was over there, and having some fantastic interactions. I'll run you through it sometime. Maybe we'll do a little, short aside at some point about Red Note and my experiences there, because they are fucking fantastic, and something spectacular and fascinating has happened. It reminds me of nothing more, and I don't, take this for, as ominous as it might sound, is the Christmas truce of World War I, where, all of a sudden all these people are fraternizing. You see Chinese people and Americans like, holy shit, Americans are like, everything my government told me about you is a lie, and Chinese people are
saying everything my government told you about you is right.
Yes. I've literally had these conversations. I did an AMA and Ask Me Anything, saying I'm an American socialist, ask me anything, and I forgot like 900 responses from Chinese people, regular people, socialists, members of the Communist Party, critics of the Communist Party, asking me a whole host of stuff, and it was absolutely fascinating. I'd like to talk about it more at length sometime. Very, very funny, though, completely unintended consequence. And I do think that's part of why Trump had this frantic backtracking, because it was the exact opposite of what they wanted. All these Americans, met Chinese people in person, and these people that had been demonized, and the system that had been demonized, it's just laid bare as these are normal people. They're just like you and me. They make TikToks of them Red Notes of themselves dancing. They're normal human beings. They're not some brainwashed mob. It is, and in fact, 90% of Chinese people own their own homes. The cost of food is really low. The cost of medicine is really low. So, all that stuff aside. Anyway,
I'd be
moving
curious
on to the
actually
next thing.
how you actually did that. I'm an American socialist. Ask me anything, because I did because with the TikTok one, I did sign on to Red Note or whatever it's called, and I know, and it's like I for the life of me can't figure out. It may just be me.
I'll help you. Comrade Uncle.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, if anybody wants to follow us on Red Note, Comrade Uncle. Comrade Uncle Podcast, Comrade Uncle Pod. You can find us on Red Note and follow us. I do have a presence there. I'll tell you exactly how I did it. I posted my first thing that went minorly viral, whatever, was I posted Chinese communist posters from the 1950s and 70s and so on and so forth, saying, I love this. And this had this huge reaction from a bunch of Chinese communists who were like, oh, wow. And it was, the poster was Workers of the World Unite. And so that brought a bunch of people to my profile. And then the next thing I did was just post an Ask Me Anything, with a little, actually an altered, another communist propaganda poster from East Germany, with people shaking hands, and so that it seems like there's a lot of Chinese communists out there, a lot of Chinese socialists, and a lot of Chinese normal people who have a voracious hunger to learn about Americans, and especially about American social. Like, what the fuck is going on? We're talking like maybe 30 to 50% of the comments were like, "Be careful, comrade! Surround the cities." I'm like, "Oh no! Oh, I can't talk about that. No, we're not doing that. We're not there." Actually, my line is, "The material conditions are not there," and I quote Che Guevara in this: "Until even the illusion of democracy is gone, no matter how paper thin, the conditions for revolution, for armed struggle, are just not there. It is not a possibility." And frankly, all other things being equal, I would love to avoid violence. I don't like bloodshed. I'm motivated by love. Anyway, okay, so moving on.
So you should, when we're all done with this, send me your, whatever you call it, handle, your login, or whatever the hell it is on Red Note, so I can see what you've done. Okay,
you got it. Yeah, it's really interesting. Maybe you can help. Actually, you know what? Maybe you can help me answer some of these 900 requests to comment questions. It is.
Sure. The thing is, I don't know. The thing is, that app seems to prefer photos, not words. I don't know quite how you do words. One of the ways is, you have to. There's a couple things. One, the easiest way is actually to translate things to Chinese for your titles, because you have a really pretty limited character count. However, in Chinese, characters, you can get a lot more in. So and the other thing that people do, you'll see, of course, it definitely favors video as well, which I don't really do a lot of. Is you'll see in the image, and that's actually what I did, is in the image I did in Chinese and then in English. I'm an American socialist, ask me anything. So you just put it in there, and then the rest can go in the comments. Or in the description, which will show up as the first comment. You can have your whole spiel, and that's what I did. I'm a Lebanese American socialist living in the United States. Blah blah blah, so on and so forth. And so you I'll show you how to do it. Okay, all right, good. You realize we've been talking for 52 minutes, and we have not touched on the topic we were supposed to talk about. I blame you for that completely.
It's completely my fault, 100%. I take responsibility in an act of selfless solidarity. I will take the hit from this. However, I demand that you do not criticize me. So I have here an article written by you, and my first question is, at what point did you decide that you hate freedom?
And do I condemn Hamas? Right. So I tell you. So the article you have is entitled "Healthcare in the Trump Administration: Challenges and Changes," and I decided that I hated freedom in June or maybe July of 1973, I think it was, because I can still see it. It's June or July, probably June. The weather, it's afternoon. The sky is that azure blue. I'm standing on the UC San Diego campus on the John Muir part of the campus, John Muir College. And there is a debate, which I'm taking part in, with a young man whose name I probably never knew. He was a member of the Young Americans for Freedom. And of course, I opposed him, so I opposed freedom. Young Americans for Freedom used to be the most right wing of the Republican Party. I think they're probably pretty much in the middle right now compared to where the Republican Party's gone. But this debate was on the U.S. health system. Is it the best in the world, or is it not the best in the world? And he took the position that it was, and I took the position, even as a 21-year-old, I think I was only 21 then, that's 50 years ago, for God's sake. I took the position that he was out of his mind. And actually, in a certain way, access was probably better back then than it is now. So I don't know. So I think that's where I first sort of fell off the wagon. And I've been having the same debate on the U.S. health system for over 50 years. And now I've been working in the U.S. health system as a medical student physician for now 40. I'm a PGY postgraduate year 45. I mean, I graduated in 1979. I think that's a PGY 45.
My God.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty old. And I've seen nothing but things get worse and worse and worse. And so when I was asked to write this piece for
yes, tell me the
online,
title and where.
It's Newsbreak is the online paper, and I'll send. I mean, it's a. Well, yeah. It's a title.
Tell me the title like and long.
It's really long. I don't know. It's called Healthcare in the Trump Administration: Challenges and Changes. And yes. It's under the www.newsbreak.com/news reporter Lauren. Lauren is the woman who asked the questions.
I'll post a link in the
okay. And I think I sent it to you the links there. So good.
You did.
So she said, what do you think it's going to look like? And so you can't say what it's going to look like without saying what it looks like. You can't say what it's going to look like tomorrow without saying what it looks like today and yesterday. So I basically go through the data, and every comment that I make is referenced with citations, usually more than one citation, about how inaccessible, inefficient, and low quality the U.S. health system is. Now, that sounds like I'm being way more critical than I should be. This is not a critique of nurses or doctors or, frankly, even administrators. It truly is not. I mean, it's not that my most favorite people are administrators. They're not. But these guys we all get up trying to do the best job we can in a system that's designed not to provide health care. It's the system that's designed to provide profits for a few, and as a consequence, provide health care for some. Unlike the national health systems, Germany, France, Britain, you name it, they all have their problems, but their central role is to provide health care for their people, and then consequently provide some monies, if you will, in terms of salary and so forth, for drug companies and manufacturing companies and the people who work there. It's a different way the system's set up to organize to run. And so, you go through, I mean, the first thing I think it's important to note is that the Commonwealth Fund, every year or two, does an evaluation of the 11 richest, if you will, I guess, Western healthcare systems. And I've looked at them back from early 2000s, maybe late 90s, to the latest one, which is just a couple of years ago. And then there's always 11 countries or 12 countries. And the United States is always number 11 or 12 in almost every metric. Yeah. We are the last. We're the most expensive, the lowest quality, the most difficult accessing. There's some things we do better than others on, but I want to emphasize, because I don't want this to be taken in the wrong way. This is not a critique of bad doctors and bad nurses or even bad administrators. This is a system problem. The same people in a different system will be providing the number one care in the whole world. But we don't do that. And as a consequence of that, We have some 60 or 70,000 deaths because people can't access care every single year. We have 500,000 to 600,000 medically related bankruptcies every single year. We have a longevity, if you will, the amount of years that the average American survives, that's gone down by a couple of years in the last handful of years, last 5 or 6 years. We've got maternal mortality that's gone up. It's one of the few countries, we are one of the few countries in the so-called industrialized world where maternal mortality, perinatal mortality around the time of birth, not at birth just, has gone up. It's more risky for my granddaughter whenever she has a kid, she hopefully won't have a kid for a while, to have a kid than it was for my wife or my mom. The risk of death. And that holds true across the board. It holds true even more if you're African American, black. Doesn't matter what your socioeconomic status is. If you're black, this is just absolutely disgusting. It is, and perhaps the most. There's many things that are disgusting about the health system, but one of the things that's probably perhaps the most disgusting is that because pediatrics does not make a lot of money, the number of pediatric beds in hospitals in the United States have decreased in the last 20-ish years. So it's harder to get care for your kids.
Wow.
And if it's true, I mean, we say it's true. I don't think we believe it. When I say we, I don't mean you and I, of course. I mean the people who are purported to lead our country. If it's true, as they say, that the children of our country are our future, then they would be doing exactly the opposite with regard to the difficulty that women and men have getting care for their kids, with getting hospital beds for their kids, with getting child care for their kids, with getting homes for their kids, with getting nutrition for their kids. It's clear as can be to me that we, the collective we, the government, and frankly, the people of the United States of America, because if we thought differently, we would do something different, don't care. As long as it's somebody else's kid, they're not mine. This is a problematic ideological viewpoint that we owe one another nothing, as opposed to owing one another everything. In fact, there was let me just hang on one second. There was a J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, was just in an interview. And J.D. Vance is a guy who purports to be Christian. And he was saying how what Jesus really said was that you are obliged to love one another, but it's in concentric circles like an onion. First it's yourself and your family, and then, which in fact is utterly untrue. So I would remind Mr. Vice President Vance, as well as anybody who's listening.
Who certainly is listening, yes, yeah. J.D. Vance, listen up.
That I would refer you to Matthew 25, 36, 41, in which, at the end of times, God comes down and he separates his people into the goats and the sheep. The sheep, of course, are his people. The goats, of course, are not. Now, I say that. I like goats, but it's okay. This is the Bible. And he turns to his people, the sheep, and he says to them, "Lo, on this day you will enter the kingdom of heaven. Because when I was poor, you cared for me. When I was sick, you visited me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me." And his people said, "But Lord, when did we do this?" And we didn't know. And he says in the Bible, the way you treat the least among us is the way you treat me. And then he turns to the goats, the people on the other side, and he says, "On this day you will not enter heaven. For when I was hungry, you refused to feed me. When I was naked, you refused to clothe me." And on and on. And they said, "But Lord, we didn't know it was you." And he says, "Doesn't matter, motherfucker." He didn't say it. Doesn't matter. What matters is that the way you treat the least among us is the way you treat me. You know, all the biblical stories about Jesus hanging out with prostitutes and washing people's feet, even that activity is carried out today by the Pope, right? I mean, it's not obviously every day, but it's in a sort of ceremonial manner. That's what love means in Christianity. J.D. Vance has it utterly wrong. Utterly wrong. We do owe one another a great deal. And, I know there's limits. You can only do what you can do. I get that. But it does matter. So to go back to this whole issue of healthcare in the United States, the way to, we have real problems now. I see them every day. I have patients who come into the intensive care unit. And remember, all I do is critical care, ICU work, right? So I see a select group of people. They can't afford their insulin. They can't afford their drugs. They come back over and over. Some of them, it's true, have developmental delays, but they can't get any help. So they don't take their insulin. So they come in over and over. There's one young man, he's 21. He won't live to be 30, I expect. 21 years old. He is in the hospital in diabetic ketoacidosis every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. It's not that I've begged. I've gotten the psychiatric services to try and get this guy declared incompetent so that we can get him in a group home, so we can get him somewhere so he won't die. Not possible. And he's just an example. There's multiples of these. Folks who are competent, can't afford their drugs, come in sick as dogs. And it's not just diabetes. It is not just diabetes. So we do have responsibility to our fellows. We are not meeting them. And as a result, the longevity in the United States has decreased. Excuse me. And we have just a raft of significant problems. And that's what we have today. Putting Trump in charge and Trump's appointees in charge is, to my mind, absolutely frightening. But I have to turn to the pages where excuse me, because one of the things that to try and sort out what this would look like, you have to go to Project 2025, which Trump denied he had anything to do with. But a bunch of the people in his government, previous and this one, wrote stuff. And yet, excuse me, you turn to it's a 900, almost 1,000-page document. You turn to the section on health, and you can see exactly what these guys are going to do. And they're already doing it. Yeah. One thing that they want to do is have a national ban against abortion. And Representative Ogles, Republican from Tennessee, has a bill that's just being presented. They would put, as a clinician who prescribed mifepristone, misoprostol to a woman to have a early abortion, 25 years in prison plus a fine. 25 years. Just think, if that was something like me, that would be a death sentence. I'd be in there for the rest of my life. That's what these guys plan to do, and that's what they will do. Now, I think it's important. Oh, and by the way, I should have done this at the beginning. I'm sorry. There is a group called Aid Access. You ever heard of them? Mm-mm. Aid Access. The reason I bring them up, sorry, I need to bring them up. The reason I bring them up is because I actually sent them a note. And I said, I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to talk to you in a secure way, not just an email. And they said, hello, AJ. We're sorry, but all communication goes through email. Let us know if you have any questions. Warmly, the Aid Access team. So I wanted to say to them, hopefully they were listening, Aid Access people, there are some things you can't say in open email. You should know this. There are times, most times I would say, I would hope, when legal and moral are utterly congruent. And the legal thing to do is the moral thing to do. There are times when legal and moral are at right angles. And when that's the case, the decision has to be made by the individual. Do you follow legal or do you follow moral? So some people say, of course it's easy to say now, if I had been a German in 1943, I would have opened my house to Jews no matter what. Yeah, right. Maybe. But, what are you doing today when the United States government, for example, is deporting people with brown skin left hand over fist? Right. Would you give them access to your house? Well, it's different, of course, because they're illegal. Really? Is that it? What do you think it was in Germany in 1943, pal? And that's true about multiple issues. Right? I mean, abortion is not the biggest issue in the world. It's not the, or I should say, not the only issue, but it does impact 50% of the population in the United States. And it's, it is, if we are moved by great feelings of love as socialists, you've got to say part of that love has to be for the right of human beings to control their own bodies. So to aid access, if you're listening to this, I hope you are, that's why I want to talk to you. Because what Representative Ogle has now proposed is a proposed bill. Mm-hmm. And what will pass, it will pass the House and the Senate, because it's all Republican. And Trump will sign it as a national ban on abortion. Now, you can say, I sort of don't like abortion. And I understand it completely, utterly. But by doing this, you will not prevent abortion, Representative Ogles. What you will do is you'll prevent safe abortion. And you'll condemn women to death. And along those lines, because it's important to remember our forefathers and foremothers, there was a guy, I will say his name now because he's dead. His name was Sam Lopallo, L-O-P-A-L-O, Sam Lopallo, an Italian-American guy. He was an Air Force commando in Vietnam in the early 60s. He was a San Antonio cop. He was a nurse. He was a nurse anesthetist in New York. And he and I came to know one another at the University of Florida. And I love this guy. Absolutely love this guy. We disagreed on a shit ton of things, but I love this guy. And one day, we were doing a case in the burn center together, burn OR together. And at the end, I've forgotten how it came up, but abortion came up. And he turned to me and he said, Joe, he said, I'm an old guy. He was probably 25 years older than me. He said, I'm an old guy. I'm a Republican. I'm a former air commando. I'm a former San Antonio policeman. I'm a nurse. I'm a nurse anesthetist. I'm a conservative. He said, but when I was in New York, I had just finished my nurse anesthesia training, and I was on call. And I got called down to the emergency room because there was a young woman who was going to have to come up to the operating room for an emergency exploratory laparotomy. And I had to do the pre-op. I was the person on call. So I went downstairs, and I saw her, and he said, it was this young black woman looking really scared and really sick. And I did the workup.
What's a laparotomy?
Opening up an exploratory laparotomy is a surgical operation which you open the abdomen just basically to see what's wrong. You don't know exactly what's wrong. Mm-hmm. And I did the things I needed to do, and I asked her what had happened, and she said I got pregnant. I needed an abortion. I went to someone who was safe, they said. But I've had this horrible abdominal pain since then. And he said, he looked at her, and she had what's called an acute abdomen, A-C-U-T-E, abdomen, meaning there's something terrible going on in her abdomen. She had pain and rigidity and fever and infection. And he said, at that moment, I knew it was wrong. She had a perforated uterus. Her abdomen was infected, peritonitis. And if we didn't get her to the operating room, she would die. So he said, I finished my work. We got her up to the OR. And just as I was giving drugs to put her to sleep, it's not sleep, of course, to anesthetize her, so the surgeon could operate, she put her hand up and said, please, one more thing, please. She said, don't let me die. And he said, Joe, I promised her, I won't let you die. And she died on the OR table. And so,
jeez,
all these years ago, this was back in 1995, 96, I had this conversation with Sam. He said, Joe, I'm a former air commando. I parachuted into Vietnam. I guess he parachuted. I fought in Vietnam. He knew it was wrong, but he did it at the time. He was a young guy. I'm a former cop. I'm a nurse. I'm a Republican. I said, but anytime anybody says to me they're going to ban abortion, I say, I will not support you in any way or shape or form. That was Sam LaPallo, a guy who, although on lots of things we disagreed, I considered a brother and a comrade. And that's what we're facing. That's what we will face. You know, and all the yakking of Catholics and Baptists and so-called Christians that say, well, just don't have sex there. You know, I'm sorry, no. You just go fuck yourself. You can't talk about that. You can't say that. You can't demand people behave the way you want to. Just like we would,
well, they won't.
We will criticize our comrades in Hamas, but we're not going to condemn them. We can suggest, but we will never condemn, right? The same thing. You can suggest, fine, you want to have abstinence, say it all you want. But the best program in the European Union, the best data on pregnancy in the European Union, if I'm not mistaken, and there's a reference to this in this paper that I wrote, this interview, is in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, sex education is robust, and it starts early, and they don't hide sex from kids. Birth control is easily obtainable, always. You don't need mommy and daddy's approval. You get what you get. And abortion is freely available. And it's uncommonly used. The lowest, or one of the lowest abortion rates in all the EU, in the Netherlands. If they really wanted to prevent abortion, this is what the right would do. But of course, that's not what this is about. Of course, what this is about the control of women's bodies, full stop.
Right.
So it's as clear as can be when you look at Project 2025. I know I'm going off on a segue there.
No.
Sorry. that changes they want in health will hurt us, not help us. And if you look at Trump's appointees, and you just go through their records, and that's what I did in this piece. I mean, one of the things I did in this piece. They're absolutely abysmal. RFK Jr., an anti-vaxxer, a guy who has no understanding of health.
You can stop and get some water if you want.
No, I've just been sick for a while. It's just not going away.
Lingering.
Long.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, his anti-vaccine rhetoric was responsible, at least partly, in the 83 deaths in Samoa when he convinced people that vaccine against measles wasn't right. You know, the NIH guy, the guy that Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, that's the proposed leader for the NIH by Trump, is a guy who co-authored the Great Barrington Declaration, advocating, natural immunity, not vaccines against COVID. I mean, the guy that he's proposed for the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Mehmet Oz, a good surgeon, a cardiac surgeon. But, this is a guy who was pushing hydroxychloroquine for COVID.
Yeah.
David Weldon, a guy who he's proposed for the Center for the Disease Control. He's an anti-abortionist. The guy who he's proposed for the FDA, Marty Makary, the surgical oncologist at Johns Hopkins. He's not a dumb guy. He's not a dumb guy. None of these guys are dumb guys. But their positions, he's a COVID skeptic about vaccine and masking. Well, okay, RFK maybe did. He had worms in his head. It's not his fault. He again argued for, quote, natural immunity, unquote, ignoring short-term deaths. Again, and the Surgeon General, Janet Naishawat, I don't know who she is, but she's a medical director for a bunch of urgent care centers. She's one of these guys who sort of, what does she say? She's written Beyond the Stethoscope, Miracles in Medicine, a Christian memoir that describes her experiences during and after the pandemic. I mean, these are not people who should be in charge of anything. That's who he's got. So what can you expect? What we can expect, I think, is exactly what we've seen. If you go to the CDC website today and look for data on N5H1, avian virus influenza, you will find a header that says, in keeping with President Trump's directive, we are limiting the data that we have. It's there on the CDC website today. The NIH has frozen grants. They've frozen the ability to spend funds. what these guys are doing, is in their ideological zeal, is they are toying with verges on destruction of what I think can only be considered as the crown jewels in the United States health establishment, CDC, NIH, and so forth. I mean, we can disagree with them on this and that, and they're appropriate to do so. It's all fine. But you don't want to destroy these things. I mean, and that's what they're doing.
That's
what
not a good alternative, yeah.
No, it really isn't. So this is, I think, deadly serious, dreadfully serious. And all I didn't read the whole project for 2025. I mean, it's too much to read, frankly. It's an ideological tract is all it is. But when you do read this, when I read the sections that I think I know something about health, it's like, holy sweet Jesus, these guys are out of their minds. They're going to take us back to the dark ages, and that's where we are heading. Women will die. Kids will die. Polio will return. Measles and all its complications will return. I mean, things that shouldn't happen will return. And then when the next pandemic hits, I don't know if it's going to be avian influenza or something else, but when the next pandemic hits, we will not have the tools we need to take care of it. And people who shouldn't die will die. So this is, I think, absolutely frightening what Trump is doing, just as regards health. Now, we can talk about the climate emergency and housing policy and transport policy and foreign policy, and to my mind, across the board, these are disasters. What surprises me is there's a guy, I hope he's listening. I sent him a note. I'm sure he never saw it. I have huge respect for George Galloway. You know George Galloway, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
George Galloway. The guy has done some good work. He's a thoughtful guy.
Yeah.
But he talks about Trump as if Trump were some progressive and thoughtful man who was going to make changes to the way Biden. George, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Trump, I mean, you can look at something he might do differently in Ukraine, with regard to the Ukraine war. Maybe. I'm not even sure he will.
Maybe.
And say, maybe this is better because Biden was so bad. Or
sure.
in Palestine. And you can say, maybe. But the evidence we have is that he'll do nothing differently. Nothing. Yes, there is a ceasefire. I want to be wrong, but my prediction is that it won't last and there'll be more bloodshed. And we'll supply Israel with everything that they need in terms of weaponry. So I don't understand people who look at Biden and say the guy's a war criminal. He is. But then somehow Trump, look at the people he's appointed for the Secretary of Defense, for example, and say somehow this will be better. No, this will not be better.
No.
Basically, we're fucked. We are utterly fucked unless we politically come together. But it's true, Odie. We cannot expect either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party to come to the rescue. There is nobody but us. And we are the ones who are going to have to be on the streets, demand changes. And, as much as for as many criticisms as I have for Timothy Snyder, Yale professor of history, you know Timothy Snyder, right? He wrote the book on tyranny. He's written some superb works on Stalinism in Ukraine during the 20s, 30s, 40s, stuff like that. Timothy Snyder, in his book on tyranny, says, he says many things. Don't obey in advance. Absolutely, Timothy, I'm with you. And toward the end of the 20 lessons, he says, you have to be ready. I'm going to get this wrong. You have to be ready. Somebody has to be ready to die when you're faced with fascism. Otherwise, we'll all die. I'm not suggesting, I don't want that to be the case. But what I'm suggesting is we have to be willing to suffer consequences. Do you hear me? Aid access. We have to be willing to suffer consequences to do the right thing so that everybody doesn't suffer those horrible consequences. And, my critique of Tim, I think he's a brilliant writer. I love reading him, is that he was silent on the Israeli genocide of Palestine. He was silent. And I don't understand. People who are silent, to my mind, have a real problem. They view people like, they view the Palestinian people as, as Netanyahu said, as Amalek, as less than animals. And I'm sorry, no, you don't have to agree with everything everybody does. But you put your boot on the neck of a people for 80 years, what do you expect is going to happen? Nat Turner, Professor Snyder, Nat Turner. That's the way to think about this. Or the Algerian Revolution. Yeah. Also ugly stuff. But you can't, so anyhow. So
Nat Turner, by the way, for maybe our non-Americans, was an American slave who led a slave revolt and a bloody slave revolt.
1831, yes. Lasted 48 hours. He killed men, women, and children. Didn't matter. He said, kill everybody that's white. Just kill them. And again, I mean, that is not an ideological position that I would ever want to take, ever.
Right.
I mean, my strongest preference is to help people, not to hurt people, no matter who they are.
Yeah.
But what the abolitionists of the day said when it was asked of them, do you condemn Nat Turner, William Lloyd Garrison, one of the leaders of the abolitionist movement of the day, he said, no, I won't condemn it because we did this. We made this happen. And he said, we warned you. We warned you.
Right.
The same thing I would say to Biden if he was to ask me about this. We warned you. What do you expect? Nobody likes to hear that.
Yeah.
But what do you expect?
Right.
And so, what are we going to see with Trump? My fear is we are going to see some very serious ugliness. And it worries me for you and people your age, for my grandkids, for my kids, for kids that aren't mine. It doesn't matter. It worries me greatly. These guys are dangerous. Yeah. Will we have a Reichstag event here? The event that occurred shortly after Hitler was made chancellor in Germany, where a supposed Dutch communist set fire to the Reichstag. It's perfectly unclear if that's really what happened, but he was blamed for it, killed for it.
Yeah.
But Hitler used that event, that Reichstag event, to basically destroy what was left of democracy in Germany, and the rest, as we know, is history. I'm afraid, will be an event here, and that's what Trump will use so he doesn't lose power, ever.
Well, if it's not Trump, it'll be somebody else. Maybe it's not. I mean, I don't have as much faith in the competence of Trump or even the people around him to do something with that, to that degree. But of course, famous last words, right? And I don't know. But there's gonna be somebody else. Like there's gonna. You think it's gonna get better without without major dramatic systemic changes? If it's not Trump, who's the next guy? Who's the next Trump? I mean, that's where we're heading. Or who's the next Biden, for that matter? Frankly, another. This whole threatening to deport people who are, who support Palestine. It's just. Yeah.
And we've already seen what ICE does. They've already deported. I mean, first of all, I oppose it completely. Papers or no papers, it's not the issue.
Right.
But they've already they don't know how to determine who's legal, quote, or not. They've deported citizens. They deported Native Americans.
They deported a Native American.
How much more legal can you? How much more, quote, legal, unquote, can you be? They were here before these guys were. I mean, Jesus Christ Almighty. Yeah. It is pure. It's flooding the zone. What they're doing is exactly what the Bannon said they'd do the first time. Flood the zone with shit. There's so much stuff going on. People don't know how to respond. So what we have to do is pay attention as much as possible to the one or two or three issues that we can focus on and oppose these guys. And oppose these guys actively. Everybody doesn't have to go demonstrate on the street. Everybody can't. But you can write, you can talk, you can post, you can do what you can do. That's what we have to do.
Well, and even
we
if
can
you're in
march.
some stronghold of, I mean, like, I don't know, like, geez, at least these Democrats, like, I don't know, maybe can be pressured. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Who knows? Labor organizing, I think, is going to be a big part of that.
This is generational work. I'm not sure we have a generation to waste, but
maybe not.
This is generational work. And again, my I would say learned. I'm not sure that's the right term to use. My opinion is that this is not. I mean, again, we've talked about this. This is not Trump. This process begins with the passage of the National Security Act of 1947, 1948.
Yeah.
When Truman's the president, that's when this begins. That's when the whole issue of us being able to overturn governments, destroy democracy, all in the name of good old Christian democracy in the United States, starts. I mean, not starts, because we did it in the 1830s too, right? Or 1840s with the Mexican War. I mean, it's not that, we've been this way for since our founding, right? Because immediately after the revolution, George Washington sent the now U.S. military to do what? To sort of destroy the Native Americans in the area of northeastern United States. But it really sort of took off with speed after I think I would say World War II, with the National Security Act. And it's now coming back. The blowback is now here. We're seeing it now. The destruction of our democracy with these laws that were passed while Biden was president, by the way, in the states, to criminalize handing out water or food, to shorten and eliminate voting places to vote, eliminate them, shorten the voting hours. I mean, and his Department of Justice did unequivocally nothing about this.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, no,
So
I mean,
in that regard, what you said.
Yeah. Go ahead.
In that regard, what you said about them being basically two sides of the same coin holds true. Really holds true. I mean, so we've got our work cut out for us. The only way I view this going forward, and is Martin Luther King said so long ago that the arc of justice is long, but the arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. We have to bend it. It doesn't automatically bend.
Right.
And this is generational. Martin Luther King also said he may not be alive to see us arrive at what he called the promised land. We've not arrived. Neither will I. Maybe neither will you. But we have to do our best to make it possible so that the people who follow us will have a life of decency and humanity. And if we don't act with regard to the climate emergency and to these neo-fascist attempts to destroy democracy, there won't be anything. There won't be anything.
Well, man, going back to your to how we began, I don't know. Sometimes weeks, decades pass in weeks or whatever. It's like, hey, don't sell yourself short. You might be around. We'll see. One of the things that that I talked about with these Chinese communists and socialists that were asking me these questions was specifically that, where is the hope for the future? Where are you guys at? Where are you going? What's the deal? And, a thing that I keep returning to and that I kind of, it sticks in my mind again, another Norman Finkelstein, concept, or, he's taking it from older concepts as well, but I loved when Norman Finkelstein was recently talking about this, and that's that the hope lies that in to paraphrase, in the changing material conditions. Things are getting worse, but it also creates opportunities for change, and it makes change happen. Another one that I like, and I disagree with this guy a lot about a lot of stuff. China, especially. Slavoj Zizek says.
Interesting guy.
Yeah, interesting, right? Yeah, interesting thinker. Wrong about a lot of stuff. I disagree with him about a lot of stuff, but he makes some good and interesting points. One of those points is that this is the end of the world. It is the end of the neoliberal order. It is happening before our eyes. It's, the cracks have widened, and things are ending. Now, where that goes is entirely up, well, maybe not entirely, but is largely, or at least possibly up to us. This is the end, but a better end is possible.
Well, that's the Gramscian statement, right? About the old world is dying, the new world is not yet born. And so we don't know what we're going to get. Right. It's true.
Right. So I guess it's safe to say that the freedom that you hate is the freedom to die without health insurance of a preventable disease.
And that's the freedom that I hate. When did I learn to hate freedom? Right, the freedom to die from infectious disease. That's what I hate. You're right about that. You know, the freedom to. I recently was, because I mean, you know, you got to do something to be useful. The Board of Medicine of the state of Georgia asked me to review some cases where things were kind of a little funky with a couple of dogs. You know, you can't say anything about the cases. I'm not going to. But one case I was asked to look at, you know, it was like, I thought the guy did pretty good work. But I saw the clinic bill for this person who had gone to see him, and the hundreds of thousands of dollars paid, or bill was paid. And I just thought, it just reminded me again, because I don't often see them. I mean, you know, I'm sort of isolated. Yes, I see the stuff that I have to pay for. But the stuff for all the people I care for, I don't see these things, right? That happens somewhere else. And I saw this. It's just breathtaking. And I just remember case after case that I've read about. I traveled to France and I got sick and I went to the hospital and they took care of me. And at the end, they said, "We're so sorry. We've got to give you this bill." It was for 20 euros for some crutches or something. Same thing happens in Britain with, you know. Yeah. It's just, if that were to happen here to someone who came from Britain and got sick in the U.S., sorry. You'd be saddled with $100,000 bills. You know, if you're really sick. It just shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Yeah. You know, and so yes, in 1973, I learned to hate freedom. There you go. It was the freedom to die from disease instead of being cared for. That's right. Yeah. But I have to tell you, that if that kid that I debated, that young American for Freedom kid, is still alive, he probably agrees with me that now that I was right and he was wrong.
If he hasn't been bought off, yeah.
He probably got sick and died.
Yeah.
Whatever. What are you gonna do, you know?
Oh, what are you gonna do, man? Yeah, that's true. It's true. Hopefully the engine of history will drive us forward, and you know, we'll have the opportunity to take the chance to take the opportunity, seize the opportunity to make, you know, the changes that are needed, you know, and we'll, you know, things will get better for us and better for everybody else too. You know, I believe it is possible. I believe that there is a better world.
A better world is possible. Yes, a better world is possible. There's no question. We just have to make it.
I love it.
Okay, man. I love it. We're an hour and 36 minutes into this.
Yeah. One more time.
I blame you completely. I blame you completely for this.
I take, in solidarity, I take complete responsibility. I'm willing to face the International Court of Justice as long as Netanyahu comes too.
Right. I'm with you.
I want to get it again one last time. The article was at Newsbreak.com, and the name is Healthcare in the Trump Administration Challenges, Changes.
Newsbreak.com /news reporter Lauren, Lauren. And I think that'll bring it. She's the reporter.
Yeah, and I'll have it in the link.
And the other thing is this piece of proposed legislation by Representative Ogles from the Republican of Tennessee, a bill ending Chemical Abortion Act of 2023, although it's obviously going to be updated to 2025.
Oh boy! Oh, thank you so much, Uncle.
Okay,
I'm happy to take the fall for you anytime. I love you, man.
All right. Love you. Take care, sweetie.
All right, take care. Bye.
We'll meet again. We should do this monthly now. We're falling behind.
I'm in. Let's do it. Right. I know, right? Bye.
Bye.
Stamattina mi sono alzato, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Stamattina mi sono alzato e ho trovato l'invaso. Oh partigiano, portami via. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Partigiano, portami via, che mi sento di morire. E se io muoio da partigiano, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. E se muoio da partigiano, tu mi devi seppellire e seppellire lassù in montagna. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Seppellire lassù in montagna, sotto l'ombra di un bel fior. Tutte le genti che passeranno, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. E le genti che passeranno ti diranno che bel fior. E questo è il fiore del partigiano. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Questo è il fiore del partigiano, morto per la libertà. Questo è il fiore del partigiano, morto per la libertà. Questo è il fiore del partigiano.